Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today for today's Criterion Learning Series presentation. My name is Steve Tompkins, and today we're going to be talking about payroll year-end for the United States. We want to remind everybody that we do have a chat and a Q&A, so if you have questions, we will be monitoring those and trying to answer all your questions in a timely manner. If there's anything that we cannot get to during this session, maybe we need more detail or something like that, we will reach out to you and make sure to get those answers to you if you have something that may be a little bit more complex than we can cover today. So let's go ahead and get started because obviously there's a lot to cover in this session. So first off, I do want to put out this disclaimer here that if you have any questions regarding the taxability of incomes or deductions, please consult with an accountant, your tax advisor, or a tax consultant. We cannot provide tax advice. What I have done is that you'll see on some upcoming slides, we have the latest data from the IRS. I say as of November 7th, because that's the last time we had this class. I don't think anything has changed in the last month, so should still all be accurate, but please double check these things as we get to them to make sure that you have the right amounts for different deductions and so forth. So let's look at these changes out there, or at least the big ones out there for different deductions that most people are familiar with. So 2025 deduction limits. So 401ks, 403bs, and most 457 plans for most employees is going to go up $500 to $23,500. There are some changes to the catch-up deductions that you may be familiar with, but I'll go over them right here. So the catch-up deductions that we've had for several years for employees who are 50 or over by the end of the year is now changed. So it's now anybody who's 50 to 59 by the end of the year will have the catch-up of $7,500. That's not actually a change in the limit, it's a change in the age, because now they have added a new age bracket for employees who are 60 to 63 by the end of the tax year, and they have a new limit of $11,250. So you'll see that additional amount in there for that, and that's a new thing. We do have that accommodation in the system already. Some of the other deductions that have limits that we should pay attention to. So flexible spending accounts for the FSA health plans, that's increased to $3,300, increase of $100 over last year. No change, unfortunately, to the dependent care, still $5,000. And then for health savings plans, so employee-only coverage or the self-only coverage is $4,300 for next year, so an increase of $150. The family coverage, it's no longer double what it was for the self-only. It's now just a little bit less. It's $8,550, an increase of $250. And then the catch-up, there's no change to that. Nothing with age or anything like that. Still $1,000. Right. So those are the deduction limits. So they're kind of the big ones out there. Of course, you may have deductions that either are specific for you. Maybe there's no tax implications or anything like that, but they're specific to you that you'll need to possibly update. And if you do have one that I didn't cover here, make sure you do look that up on the IRS website if there's any changes to those things there. So let's go ahead and switch into the browser. So as you're aware, of course, most of this stuff is going to be happening in the back end. And so I'm just going to immediately go over to the admin side of the system here. As you see, I have a lot of tabs kind of preparing for what we're going to cover today. And we're going to go over some setup things that you're going to need to do for the year. So the first off is going to be, I'm just starting off with the holiday. You don't have to do it first. It just needs to be done. If you're going to use timesheets next year, you do need to have a holiday schedule. Otherwise, you will see a message when somebody goes to try to log in or create a timesheet in the new year. You're going to get a message saying that a holiday doesn't exist. So you'll need to create one. Even if you don't actually have paid holidays, maybe you have a floating holiday system or something, you do need to have a holiday schedule set up. It doesn't need to actually have any holidays on it. So that does need to be configured if you're using timesheets. Now, if you already have one, let's say for this year or prior years, you can actually just copy or clone that one here. You'll see like I have this one here for 2024. once I check the box here, and you may have multiple schedules, perhaps you have people work on the weekends, they have a separate holiday schedule or something, you could check off more than one if you need to. You could check them all off. I don't know if you want to do that for several years, but it's possible. Maybe you've got 10 schedules and you need to do that. But either way, go ahead and check that off and hit the clone button here. And you'll see here, first off, if you have multiple employers, you can actually clone to another employer if you need to. Like I have this Solarama I could copy to. But what you'll want to do is put in the year, 2025 as an example, and then hit the clone. And then I usually just change the name and the code once I've cloned it, but you can change it here if you want to put like 2025 there. I change it when I go in because you do need to go in if you have specific days and possibly change these to the correct days for next year. So you'll see here now I go in 2025 and I strip off the words clone at the end. So, that's how I do it, but you could certainly change that when you're doing that there. Double check, of course, the grouping and the days closed and hours per day. Perhaps you have a change there. Just double check that information. And then you want to go through and possibly change the dates. So come in here, you can either type in the date or just select the date. And of course, look at a calendar. I don't know if that's Memorial Day. I believe it is, but make sure you have the correct dates in there for the different holidays that are out there for next year. So whatever they happen to be, you can either type them in or use the calendar to select them and update your holidays. So you'll need to go ahead and do that. All right, so just a quick one on holidays there. The other thing you will need to do, and I see there was a question about the 401ks. I'm going to get there. It's one of my tabs right here, so I will get there. Is you will need to create your payroll schedule for next year. So you may have a situation like mine where you have multiple schedules for whatever reasons, or you might have just one. But what you'll want to do is go into that one there, whichever one it is, and create it for next year. Now I've already gone forward there. Let me go to one where I think I have one set up. Maybe I don't have one semi-monthly. Just I want to show you this. Okay, so I don't have one set up for 2024, but it doesn't really matter. I need to create a new one for the next year. So you go into your existing schedule and you click the new button, and basically it'll pre-fill the year and it knows the start date based off the end date of the last payroll schedule that's already out there. So this is on an existing one. Of course, if you create a new one, you will need to put in this information. And then however many periods you need to create. Like in mine is semi-monthly, so I need to create 24 periods. And I hit generate. And it'll go ahead and create these. And maybe what you'll need to do is go through and change the pay date for some, because maybe it ends up on a weekend or something. So double check the pay dates. Of course, you can change these when you're processing payroll. When you actually go into the payroll process, you might change the 119 to, not be on a weekend or something like that. You can change it at the time, but you might want to correct it before you get to that payroll. You have that correct there. And of course, you can create as many years in advance as you would like. Like I had one that went out to 2026. So if I wanted to create the next 5 years, you feel free to do that. It doesn't hurt the system to have those. It just means that if you ever need to make a change, you'd have to go through and change a whole bunch of stuff because you've already created them. So you'll definitely need to do that there. And then just make sure you hit save to save your schedule. All right, so that's the payroll schedules. Next up is tax rates. It's possible you're going to have a change in unemployment rates, or one of those taxes where it's a specific employer rate. So things like, let's say, federal withholdings, Social Security, state withholdings, those types of things where there's a tax table, we handle those there. But unemployment rates are typically assigned to employers. And if you have multiple employers, you'll have to do this for each one and make sure you have the correct rate in there for the new year. So if you have it now, you could go ahead and add it in there now. So let's just say, as an example, my California SUI, and maybe it goes to 3.7%. So I could come out here, hit add employer tax. I'm just going to search for this rather than using my work location, but you can. All right, put in your tax identifier. You can put down 1125 as an example. And let me make sure I check that right there. Letting me do 1125. And so let me go into the next year. Interesting. I should be able to do that. It's possible that my system has not been updated with latest tax rates. So let me just do 24 here, just to show you what you would have to do. And then I would go in, once it has been added, I'd have to go in and put in the new rates for the year. So you'll see here, oh, I already have one for 25, that's why. So I forgot I did this last time, but you'll want to go and put in this rate right here. And you'll notice that to be 3.7%, I do need to put it in the decimal format, which is 0.037. If I typed in 3.7, that's going to be a problem because I would be paying 370%, which is obviously not the right percentage. So make sure you put that in and just double check that the rate shows correctly right there. All right, so one or more states there. If you do have a local tax that possibly has an employer specific rate, you'll have to go through and update those. And of course, I can do it ahead of time like I did here, so that once I go and run that first payroll in 2025, it'll take that rate. All right, so that's gonna be your tax rates there. Same thing may apply if you're using minimum wages. So you may have a new minimum wage increase for next year. You would have to put it in there. Like I have this one in San Diego that's effective on 1/1/25. So it's possible you need to add that in there. What you would do if you've never used this before, if it's been a while, is find the geocode that's appropriate. So let's happen to know that one for San Diego and select that. Now, of course, it could be regional, maybe for the whole state of California, as an example, there's a minimum wage increase, or there's something for the county. And of course, maybe there's a federal one. I don't believe there is one, but if there was, then you would do country there. But you'll see your city is going to be specifically to this zip code, this San Diego zip code. But I could do a different one if I needed to. And then I would put in, the name. So I might want to say San Diego 2025. Oops. And then whatever the rate's going to be for that year. All right, with an effective date of, let's say, 1/1/25. So if you're using minimum wages, you double check that those have been updated for 25. All right, let's look at deductions and how those will work. So this is where you will see those new things for the 401k catch-ups from 60 to 63. And I already have these configured just to show you these on how that works. So the code and description can be whatever you like. Maybe you're going to use something like I use where it says catch-up 60 to 63 and $ because it's an amount. This new deduction type is available. It's available today, a 401k CU ages 60 to 63. So make sure you have that selected so that it can be used for those folks who are eligible for it. All right, and then make sure you put the correct limit down here for that code. As you may remember, it's 11,500. So put that down there for the employee limit. You may have it pooled like I have because I have a percentage and a dollar amount one. I'm using this as kind of I believe is the master record for that. And you'll see how the rest of this setup, you could probably copy what you're doing with your regular 401k catch-ups that you've been using previously. So like maybe the employee amount, maybe there's a match or something like that. You could have all those in there and just make sure that's set up. But this is the key right here is this 401k CU ages 60 to 63. Make sure that's there. And then obviously for the other deduction, it should still stay with this one, which is what it should say in your other catch-up. You'll notice here in my other catch-up, it's got that. All right. So that is the new deduction type that's available for those special 401k catch-ups for 60 to 63. Now, one thing to check is you may need to put system labels on various deductions so they land in specific box 12 or 14 on your W-2 forms. So first thing to check is which box that deduction should land into, or possibly income, and I'll cover that as well. But let's say that it's supposed to be in box 12A or something like that. I don't have all the codes right in front of me. First thing you want to do is make sure that system label actually exists. So, and I have them all here. You'll see here like 12A, AA, B, BB, etc., all the way down to box 12Z. So you'll want to make sure this system label, which is under your user code tables, exists under label. They should already be there. We did add them when we added this functionality. So you should see these, but if it doesn't exist, or perhaps you made it inactive or deleted it, make sure it exists. And then on the deduction, I'll show you also on the income code, you can specify right here under system labels which box this will show in. You'll see here box 12. There's also one for box 14. So if you want to verify it shows in the correct box. Now 401k, you shouldn't have to worry about because it's already kind of in the back end coded that way. But if you just want to double check and make sure, go ahead and do this here. All right, this won't affect anything like the taxability or stuff like that. It simply applies to where it's going to show up on the W-2. So if you print your W-2s and you say, oh, it's missing, you can come in here, select the right code, and it's going to show up in that box correctly. All right, the same thing will apply to income codes if there's any incomes that should show in box 14 or box 12. So if I go into an income code, let's just say this bonus one for an example here, you'll see I have a system label here, and I could choose the correct box if I need to do that. All right, so that is kind of the new things with deductions. You will, of course, want to go through and put in your new limits. If there is a limit for a deduction, like a 401k, as I mentioned, or HSA, FSA, et cetera, and you'll want to put those in there. And then you may have your own specific deductions that have a limit. You'll want to go ahead and put that limit in there for those deductions. If there's something specific for your company, perhaps there's like a reimbursement or something like that, and there's a certain limits in there for the next year, you'll want to do that. Now, of course, you do want to put the limit in after you've run your last payroll for the year. Don't do it now for a deduction you're going to still pay out for the rest of the month. Excuse me. So that's deductions. Same type of thing with income codes. It's possible you have an annual ceiling or something like that for a particular income code. You can update it here. And then, of course, it's going to be applicable. But again, don't do it until you've done your last payroll because it might somehow trigger that deduction or income to go if somebody's at the limit and now you've changed the limit. All right, so now let's talk about some of the reports that you can run out here in the system. And I already have pre-run these reports to make it a little quicker and easier to run. So I'm just going to look at a few of them that you may want to run. You may be very familiar with these reports because you may run them every payroll or things like that, but just reminders for things. So the first one under payroll reports is this one here called deduction summary. This is what it looks like. It's by employee, as you can see here, and then all of their deductions. All right, and here's the options that I used for this report just so you can see them. I did current year because it's still currently 2024. Obviously, if I run this in January and I want to look backwards, I would have to do previous year. You may want to run it for, like a specific, group of employees or department or something like that. I ran it for my one employer in here. I have two, but of course, those options are all, there's nothing new there, but just be aware of that if you're looking at one person's W-2, it would run, maybe just one page you did that versus hundreds of pages or dozens of pages like I have. But here you can see like the HMO and so forth. Here's the employee amount and the company amount. So if you're looking for it to show up in a particular box on the W-2, this is where you can see on that individual what those numbers should look like. All right. And you'll see that there. I don't need to go into the detail of this report, but get you an idea of what that report would look like. That's the deduction summary report. Another one that you may want to look at if you're going to compare it to the W-3 report would be the deduction totals. Now, of course, this doesn't show the individual employees, but if you're going to have a particular thing showing on your W-3, like it's going to show deferred income or something like that, you'll want to look at those totals to make sure it matches up. So this is another report you may want to run. As you can see, I've got employer deductions and then employee deductions down here at the bottom. That's the deduction totals report. Similar in the income report. So down here under income summary and income totals, these would be very similar reports. So here's the total incomes by employee and then by code. So I can look at all these things here. And the nice thing is it does have a total amount. So if you wanted to do the math and say, okay, here's all of his incomes and perhaps they're all taxable. Going back to that deduction report, take out all the pre-tax deductions, let's say for federal, does that number match up to what you're seeing on your W-2 box 1? So that might be a way you do that. Maybe you export it out to Excel and you do some math in Excel to figure out those numbers and make sure that they all match exactly what you're trying to see on those reports. And then, of course, you've got your income totals, very similar to that deduction totals, except for now it's the incomes. You'll want to look at, of course, like the year-to-date amount. So you can see my example here. And again, maybe you look at all of these things and you say, okay, all of these are taxable. Go to that deduction totals, remove all the pre-tax deductions, and then compare that to your W-3. All right, this one is still running. Okay, so that they did taxable wages by employee. I'm not sure why that one is still running. I might have put in a weird criteria there. But it's similar to, let's say, the income total report here, or the income summary. It's going to be the taxes by employee. I'm not sure why this one's still running, but it's going to be the taxes by employee. So it'll say, Gary Griffin and have his different taxes out there. And then this is the taxable wages total. So I'm all over the place. I use this for my demos. I've got people in probably every state here. Um, Maybe yours is similar to this, where you've got all these different states, but you'll want to, of course, look at these and see, okay, here's the gross wages. Does that match up to previous report, like the income summary report? There's your subject wages, your taxable wages, et cetera. And then your withheld for both the employee and the employer. So you can make sure that's going to match up to what you see here when you look at your W-2 and your W-3 reports. So you have all these. You probably wouldn't have Canada mixed in like I have, but all the different states you'll see here located. Now, maybe yours is simple and it's just one state, and you just have 5 or 6 lines up there. That'd be nice and easy. Mine's a little more complicated. All right, now before I get to the W-2s, we do need to decide, what are we going to do with our W-2s? Do we want to publish them out to self-service? If that is something you want to do, there's a couple of things you need to do first. First is you need to figure out where you're going to save that report, that W-2 report, in self-service. And to do that, I need to go to my settings under General and go to Documents. And I would need to create a folder here if I don't already have one. Now, I have one called W-2. But if you don't, if you come here and you don't have any of these folders up here, you need to make a folder. So from here, you would add a folder. And I do want to reiterate, this is only necessary if you're going to publish the report, the W-2s, to the employees. If you're not going to do that, you don't have to go through these steps. But you may want to call this tax documents or something like that, and make that folder. So now you'll see this one called tax documents right here. All right, now if you accidentally make a mistake, misspell something, you can edit or delete. Just scroll over to the right and you'll be able to see that right there. But there's that folder I just created. As I mentioned, I did this one for W-2. Now, if you go in here and you've already used it, maybe you did it last year, you might see your W-2s for previous years, like I have here. All right, once you create that folder, then you can go down to Document Delivery under System Configuration. And you can set up your system to deliver your W-2s and possibly your ACA. We'll cover this in the ACA training, but you can set it up now. Where do you want to deliver these? So when you come in here, if I clicked add, all of this would be blank except for the employer. And I would have to fill this stuff out. But just to show you, like I did W-2, which report am I going to be doing here? Well, this is the W-2. All right, perhaps you're doing 1099s or something. You can do that too there. It does need to be active. Here is a setting. Where do you want it to be delivered to? If this is checked and an employee has a personal email, and it does say send by email right here, it will send it to their personal email address versus the primary email address. So it's the second email address screen on the employee. All right, so that's if I want to send by email. If I have this checked, but this isn't here, it's not going to be delivered to their email. And if I don't have this checked and I have this here, it's going to go to their primary email address. If they don't have a second email address and this is checked, it'll go to their primary. All right. Now, if I want it posted to self-service, I need to select the path right here. All right. So this would be that folder I just created. You'll see there's that one tax documents as an example. I already have W-2 selected, so I don't need to worry about that. And then I would hit save. Now, I do want to point out, before I get to the publishing, one final thing. This is a feature that we added in the last quarterly update. Under preferences, the employees can now opt into paperless delivery of their tax documents, which means it will not print a W-2 for them. It will deliver it to self-service, but you do need to have that set up before this actually works. So You can't enable this if you don't go through that setup on that prior screen where you say, you like use a personal email address, send to by email. But if they check this here, they have to opt in. By default, this is turned off. They opt in. Here's the message they're going to see here. They agree. They consent to get electronic delivery of tax document, and they hit I agree. That's the only way that'll be checked off. And then they can hit update there to save that. But that does need to be there. And just to clarify, when I'm talking about the personal email address versus the primary email address, you'll see here, this would be the primary and this is the personal. So if I had that personal one checked, it would go to this one here. If this was blank, it would go back to this one. All right, so let's go look at the W-2s. Now I've already run it because it takes a while to run on my system here because I got a lot of employees. So I wanted to do this, but here you'll see the options that I did. I did it for one employer here. Doing the employee copy. I could run it for like one employee if I wanted to. Here's the year. And then I hit apply and then it ran this. So here I can see all the W-2s. I may want to export it out, save it, download it, and save this because I want to review it or something like that. Of course, I can print it. Here's the delivery right here. So when I publish paperless, all those folks who've checked off that box is just going to deliver it to their email address. All right, so I would hit that, and it's going to deliver that to everybody. Now, of course, if I'm running this today and I still have a couple of payrolls left, I don't want to publish this because, their W-2s are not going to be accurate. So just be careful not to do that right there. Don't deliver it when they are not ready to be actually sent out. But here you can see, this, you'll want to double check stuff like you make sure your employer address is correct and stuff like this. This is coming from different settings in the system. So if, let's say, your EIN is not right, you can fix that. Let me show you where that is. That's under your employer. Hopefully it's right because you've been filing like your 941s and stuff like that. But if you want to just double check, check your EIN right here. Make sure this is correct. What is your primary work location? That's the address. So you may have 5 like I've got or several more than this, but the primary is what's going to actually print on the W-2 right here. So make sure the correct primary address is there, the one that you want. All right, and then of course the employee's address, that's up to the employee. If you happen to notice that it's wrong, you can go and fix it on the employee and rerun the report for them. But if they say, hey, I never got my W-2, I didn't opt in, you may want to have them go and check their errors right there. Now I can on this delivery here. I shouldn't have done that. I'm still delivering them. I can publish these, but still print. So if I don't have that paperless out there, and I have it set to print and be published as self-service, I can do that. So I can get a printer version of this and still save it to self-service. So in that drop down, there was print the paper copies. It can still deliver it to self-service. Now, what's going to happen, and this does take a little while to go, is in that document folder, and let me show you again where that is, you will end up seeing a big, huge, you'll see here like 13 megs in this one, 55 megs in this one. This is the entire W-2s for the company. The employees will get an individual one. They're not going to see everybody's W-2. Obviously, that would be terrible to share everybody's W-2 with everybody in the company. This is one where I can see it for everybody if I wanted to view this W-2 for the company. But if I go to an individual employee, let's say Gary here as an example, when I go to his different documents in here, it's going to be his W-2. So I just want to make sure, not documents there, it's a folder, sorry, my documents and then reports. So here's that W-2 folder. And then I would go to like 2021 and I could view, you'll see here, it's very small. Like there's a W-2, it's only 1 megabyte versus the other one, I think it was like 55 megabytes. So this is his, the other one, if I look at it in admin, is everybody's. All right, so that's the W-2. Of course, the W-3 is the other report that you might need to run. I have it open right here. Again, I've already run it so you can see this. But you can see here, what it looks like. I guess, of course, is the totals. And again, you may want to compare this to that tax report that you saw out there, that summary report. So, your total taxable wages and Social Security, et cetera, and then withheld and everything like that. All right, again, if the address is wrong or EIN, that's back in the employer setup. This checkbox right here for the kind of employer, just to clarify where that is, it's under your payroll settings. It's employer type right here. So if you are one of these other things, you'll want to check those off. If you're not, it's none apply, and that checks off the 941 box. But if you're one of the other ones, then it would do that. Right, so you'll see those right there. And then, of course, double check all the numbers that are on here. And this is the paper one. Now, everything I'm doing right now is the paper version of these things. If you're using something like Atrix, then there's different steps. You can still run these reports, of course, and you may want to compare it to what's in Atrix. That would all be under government reports. I don't have time to go through this, but if you're using Atrix, it's a similar process to this, that you go and look at your W-2s, but it has a wizard to step you through it. So it starts off with looking at the W-2s for the individuals. Once you go through there, you go through a step, it does the W-3 and stuff, and you can review it there, and then they handle the transmission and the distribution and stuff like that based off of what you've selected. All right, so that is basically where we're at today. I know there was a bunch of questions that came in. No, you're right, I saw that. I apologize. It does say, I believe, 2025 on my PowerPoint. I will change it to say 2024. I thought I had 2024 on there, but I had 25 on the brain. So thank you for pointing that out on the PowerPoint. Yes, it was the updates as of a month ago. The catch-up one, I believe I showed you how that is set up. So I think that was answered there. And then tax rates. So this was one, would the local county tax where one be updated by Criterion? If it's one of the fixed ones, it's not an employer-specific one, that is handled by our updates. And I can't show you the new rates in the system, but that will be handled and gets updated. And let's see. Another question about the deductions. So we do not need to add new lines for deductions and income codes. We just change the amount after the last payroll of the year. Yes. So if you have a new amount or limit, just change it after the last payroll of the year. You don't have to create like a new deduction code for 2025. I went over the tax document folders again, so hopefully y'all see that. And we will send this reporting out, so you'll be able to review that. And I did talk about printing and delivery to self-service. You can do that too. So lots of great questions that came through. And as I mentioned, we're going to send this back out. Let me just go ahead and revisit the slideshow here. So I did say 2025 there. I apologize, that's 2024. So thank you for catching that. Here's the last slide I wanted to show you. You're probably not going to be joining us in 2 weeks unless you happen to also have a Canadian division or something like that, but we are going to cover Canada in 2 weeks for those Canadian friends of ours. Next year, here's our schedule into February of next year. So first thing we're going to talk about is the new mobile app. You may or may not be familiar with that. We're definitely very proud of that and making lots of changes to it and getting it really nice. And there'll probably be some new features that are released between now and the 9th of January when we're going to actually have a webinar on it. So hopefully you're able to join us for that. And then if you are responsible for Affordable Care Act reporting, in a month and a half, we're going to talk about ACA reporting. We're going to do 2 of these. There'll be another one in February. So, that's going to be available there. And then scheduling. So we have never had a webinar on our scheduling module. There's a whole bunch of changes in scheduling that are on the roadmap, and we're going to show a bunch of those in February. So we hope to see you in one or more of these starting next year. Like I mentioned, you're probably not going to be here in the next one. So next year, we'll hopefully see you at those. If not, if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, help@criterionhcm.com. That'll reach out to your support rep, and they'll be able to help you with these types of questions out there. I probably won't see most of you until next year. So Happy New Year and happy holidays to everybody. I hope to see you all next year. Thank you so much for your time.